If you're a real estate investor and are wondering how to raise and leverage private money to make more profit on every deal, then you're in the right place. On Raising Private Money, we'll speak with new and seasoned investors to dissect their deals and extract the best tips and strategies to help you get the money, because the money comes first. Now here's your host, Jay Conner.
But I wouldn't have made $160,000 unless I'd had the motivatedsellers.com lead and the private money. I closed that deal in 7 days.
If you're investing,
the podcast for all things real estate investing.
So welcome back to another episode of Investor One-on-One, the podcast where we connect the nation's top real estate investors who are reshaping the industry and redefining success. Today's guest is a legend in creative real estate financing, known nationwide as the Private Money Authority. He's helped countless investors fund their deals without banks, credit, or hard money. After being blindsided when his bank cut off his funding, he turned frustration into innovation, developing a system that landed him over $2 million in private money in just 90 days. He's a creator of Where to Get the Money Now, and his strategies are allowing investors everywhere, big or small towns, to profit without limits. So let's dive in and see how he cracked the code to private money and built a funding empire that fuels real estate deals coast to coast. Welcome to the show, Jay Conner. It's a pleasure having you, man.
Thank you so much for inviting me to come along and talk about the subject that I'm so excited about and so passionate, that being private money. And I'll tell you why I'm so excited about private money. It's because since I started using private money all the way back in 2009, I've never missed out on a real estate deal because I didn't have the funding. Private money's had more of an impact on our real estate investing business than any other strategy that we have put to work.
I love it. And I'm so excited to hear more from you, especially because you're so passionate about it and you've been doing this for such a long time. So let's start off with your story. Take us back a little bit. What was your first real estate deal like? And how did that set stage for your journey?
Oh, wow. So my first real estate deal goes all the way back to 2003. And my wife, Carol Joy, and I, we live here in eastern North Carolina in a very, very small town, Morehead City, North Carolina. Our total target market's only 40,000 people. So we're in a small market. But since that time, we've bought and sold and rehabbed over 500 houses since we started in the business. And the first 6 years, or from 2003 until January 2009, all I knew to do to get my deals funded was go to the local bank and get on my hands and knees and say, please fund my deal. So, that's how I got my first deal funded. Now, this was way before I knew anything about private money. I had an unsecured line of credit at the local bank. This was in 2003. Back in that time, if you could fog a mirror and prove you had a pulse, you could get an unsecured line of credit. I had a $250,000 unsecured line of credit. And so I really didn't know what I was doing. I looked in the Homes magazine. I found this foreclosure, this bank-owned property. And so I got it under contract. I bought it with for $50,000. I put $50,000 worth of rehab in it. And I had, so then I had $100,000 in it using the unsecured line of credit. So it was all beautiful, totally rehabbed, and I put it in the multiple listing service. And I tell you, it's funny, 45 days went by with no showings. And this home was absolutely beautiful. I had it listed for $139,900. So with no showings in 45 days, I was reading one of those books on creative selling. And what I read in the book was, it said, if you put an ad in the paper, this was back when people put ads in papers. If you put an ad in the paper that offered owner financing, you could sell your house really fast. So I put an ad in the local paper offering owner financing, and I didn't put the address of the house. And one of the first people that called me, his name was Linwood. Linwood called me up and he says, Jay, I want to see this house. And I said, well, Linwood, it's sort of hard to find in Morehead City, North Carolina. I said, if you meet me at the Seco gas station, you can follow me into the house. Well, you see, the fact of the matter is, it was on Mayberry Loop Road. And if you went down the ugly side of Mayberry Loop Road, you're not looking so good. But if you go down the beautiful side of Mayberry Loop Road, then that's looking good leading up to this house that I had for sale. So Linwood met me at the gas station. He followed me into the house, pulled in the driveway. I had it landscaped absolutely beautiful. And I opened up the door, and he went in and looked around, and he came back. He says, Jay, I'll give you an $18,000 lease option deposit right now. There was only one problem with that. I didn't know what a lease option deposit was. But my daddy told me if somebody offers you money, you take it and you'll figure it out. So Linwood wrote me a check for $18,000 as a lease option deposit to sell it to him on terms, rent to own or lease purchase. Well, I was a mortgage broker still at the time, originating mortgages. And back then, if you had a mid-credit score of 580, I could get you done and get you a mortgage. Well, God is good. Linwood had a 583 credit score. I got him an FHA mortgage. I applied that $18,000 to his closing cost and his FHA down payment, and I cashed him out, and I cashed the property out. So that first deal, I made $39,000, and I didn't even know what in the world I was doing. So, as I said, I used local bank funding for my first 6 years here in the business. But then all that changed in January 2009. And then that's when I learned about private money.
And that's kind of following up to my next question. So eventually the bank kind of cut you off, and that's what led you to private money. How did that moment shape your approach moving forward?
Well, that moment when I was cut off from the bank changed everything. I mean, if it had not been for that moment of the bank cutting me off in January of 2009, you and I wouldn't even be here, visiting on this podcast. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting right here at my desk, and, believe it or not, we actually still have handsets and cords here in North Carolina. But anyway, I was sitting here at my desk, and I picked up my phone, and I called up Steve. Now, Steve was my banker. Steve had been my banker for 6 years. He had funded a bunch of deals for me, and I had 2 houses under contract. And so I called him up to tell him about the funding that I needed for these 2 houses. Now, this was January 2009, after being in the business for 6 years. And I learned like that over the telephone that the bank had closed my line of credit with no notice. I said, Steve, what in the world are you telling me? The bank has cut off my line of credit. Why? He said, Jay, don't you know there's a global financial crisis going on right now? I said, no, but you just gave me a financial crisis for cutting me off with no notice. He said, sorry, Jay. He said, the bank's not loaning money out to real estate investors anymore. So, I hung up the phone and I sat here for a moment. I want to share with you, and your audience, a very powerful question that I asked myself right after I had learned that the bank had cut me off. And the power's in questions. And this question I want to share with you will help fix any problem that anybody has. I don't care if it's health, financial, career, relationships, money, doesn't matter. And here's the question. By the way, as a side note, these people running around saying every problem is an opportunity, I want to throw up. I want to be like the Kool-Aid guy that runs into a brick wall. I didn't have an opportunity. I had a problem. Now, the problem became an opportunity, or you and I wouldn't be here. But at that moment in time, for goodness sakes, let's face the facts. I had a problem. Here's the question I asked myself. I said, Jay, who do you know that can help fix your problem? I immediately thought of a good friend. His name is Jeff Blankenship. In fact, Carol Joy and I just saw him this past weekend. We know each other from church and going to a cappella gospel singing events. And I knew Jeff at that time was investing in single family houses in Greensboro, North Carolina. So I picked up the phone and I called Jeff and I told him what had just happened about me getting cut off at the bank. Jeff says, well, Jay, welcome to the club. I said, what club is that? He said, that's the club of having your line of credit cut off by the bank. I said, well, Jeff, why are you telling me that? He says, because my bank cut me off last week. I said, well, Jeff, how are you going to get your deals funded? He said, well, have you ever heard of private money and private lending? I said, no. He says, have you ever heard of self-directed IRAs and how people can use retirement funds that they already have to earn interest that we would pay them, they would fund our deals, and the interest they earn would be either tax-deferred or tax-free. I said, Jeff, I don't have a clue what in the world you're talking about. I said, what is private money? He said, well, there's this gentleman down in Jacksonville, Florida, by the name of Ron LeGrand. I said, who is Ron LeGrand and what is private money? He says, I don't know what private money is, but Ron LeGrand says we can get a lot of it. I said, okay. So I went to my first real estate investing seminar with Jeff to the Ron LeGrand event all the way back in January 2009 to learn about private money and private lending. And I did. I learned about private money. And you know what I learned, Orr? I came back from that seminar and I learned that the way to attract private money for your deals, the secret is to don't chase, beg, sell, or try to persuade anybody into anything. You know, the worst time in the world to be trying to raise private money is when you need it for a deal. Now, here's a writer downer, or desperation's got a smell to it. And if you're looking to raise private money and you got a deal to fund, you already sound desperate. So here's the secret sauce. What did I do? I separated the conversations of talking about private money to people in my own warm market with my own connections and then having a deal to fund. So here's what I did. Here's how I went about doing it. You know, the traditional way is go to the local bank, fill out applications, have your credit score pulled. They do appraisals, all that stuff. Well, here's a very, very important distinction to understand. People ask me all the time, Jay, how do I get started raising private money? I tell you, the very first thing you got to do is own the real estate between your ears. Now, what does that mean? What that means is have the right mindset. You see, I've never asked anybody for money to fund my deals. So how do I get my deals funded? Here's the secret. I put on my teacher hat, which says private money teacher. Now, here's what's so powerful about this. You see, I've got 47 private lenders right now funding my real estate deals. And you know what's interesting, Orr? Not one of these 47 people ever heard of private money until I told them about private money. They never heard anything about self-directed IRAs. So what did I do? I went about teaching people in my own warm market, people I go to church with, people in the Rotary Club, people that I ordinarily see on a regular basis. I put together my program that I was going to offer. So you said, instead of asking for a mortgage in this world, I'm offering a mortgage. So I teach them the program. I teach them, say, here, here's what private money is. Here's how you can use investment capital, or you can use retirement funds to fund your deal, and I'll pay you either tax-free or tax-deferred interest, depending on the type of retirement funds you have. So I taught them the program. I'd say, look, here's the interest rate I pay, which, by the way, is 8%, no points. I've been paying 8%, no points, ever since 2009. Here's how you're protected. Here's how you can get your money back in case of an emergency. So then they tell me they like the program and how much money they got to work with. Here's the last secret I'm going to share, and I'm going to turn it back to you, Orr. I'm going to share the exact script I say when I pick up the telephone and I call a private lender to fund my deal. You see, they've already told me how much they've got to work with. So let's do a little role play here, or let's say you're one of my new private lenders, hypothetically. Let's say you and I have known each other for quite a while. We're friends. You already trust and like me and all that. And I've told you about private money, and you've told me you've got $150,000 in a 401k in a previous employer. So I've introduced you to my self-directed IRA company that I recommend. And let's say that you've moved that $150,000 over and you have now established your self-directed IRA account. And guess what? When you did that, I told you I'm going to put your money to work for you just as soon as possible. So a week or two goes by and I call you up. You answer the phone. We have a little chit chat. Here's the exact script, the exact words that I say for you to fund my deal. So I call you up. We have a little chit chat. And I said, or I have got great news for you. I can now put your money to work. I've got a house over in Newport, North Carolina, with an after repaired value of $200,000. Now, the funding required for the deal is $150,000. That matches up to the funds that you've got set aside in your retirement account. Now, closing is going to be next Tuesday, so you'll need to wire your funds from your account to my real estate attorney's trust account. I'm going to have my real estate attorney email you the wiring instructions. That's the end of the conversation. The most stupid thing that I could have asked Or is, do you want to fund the deal? Of course Or wants to fund the deal, and I'll tell you why. Or wants to fund the deal, number one, because he's moved that money over to the self-directed IRA company at my recommendation. So he's already moved the money over. Number two, Or knows I'm not going to bring a deal for him to fund unless it matches the criteria of the program I already taught him. And number three, for goodness sakes, Or's not earning any money until I put his money to work as I promised him I would. So I'm ethically bound and obligated to invest Or's money. Unpack that. I taught him about private money. I told him about the program. He loves the program. He's moved his money over, and now I'm going to put his money to work, and everybody is happy.
Love that. Wow, that's a really good script. I swear I really wanted to invest as you were saying that. I was like, take my money for a moment. Let's go a little bit back and talk about what exactly is private money for our investors hearing this, because we have some newbies, we have some seasoned investors, but I want to hear what private money is to you and how it differs from hard money or traditional bank loans like we spoke a little bit about.
Thank you. Yeah, so private money. So here's what a private money lender, here's who a private lender is. A private lender is an individual, a human being, just like you and me, that loans either their investment capital and or their retirement funds to us real estate investors. So the private lender is the bank. So when we say private lender, I'm not talking a JV partner. The private lender does not own any of the property. The private lender acts in the same capacity as a bank. So it's your land trust, your LLC, whatever entity that you're investing in, you own the property. Your entity owns the property. The private lender is the bank, which means we're going to protect them the same way we protect the local bank or mortgage company. We're not going to borrow any unsecured funds. We're going to give them a mortgage or a deed of trust to collateralize the promissory note. We're going to name them on the insurance policy as the mortgagee. So if there's ever a claim against that insurance policy, then the insurance company makes the check payable to the lender, the private lender, and to your company. We're going to name the private lender on the title insurance policy as an additional insured in case there's any title issues down the road. So the private lender is the bank. Now, let's be very, very clear. I'm not talking, when I say private money, I'm not talking about hard money. Now, hard money is typically a broker of money. A hard money lender broker is typically a broker that's gone out and raised money for their fund for people to invest in. And then the hard money lender turns around and loans that money out to us real estate investors. And so there's lots of differences. By the way, I'm not poo-pooing hard money lenders. Some of my best friends are hard money lenders. They use my techniques to raise private money for their fund that they turn around and loan back out to real estate investors. So I say establish as many relationships as you can with as many people. But here are some very, very important distinctions and differences between hard money and private money. First, interest rate. As of today's recording of this podcast, you're going to be paying between 12 and 14% to a hard money lender. My land's 12 to 14%, goodness gracious. Well, private money, I'm paying 8%. Big difference in the interest rate. Secondly, hard money lenders are going to have points for origination fees, typically going to be 2 to 4 points. Private money, I never pay origination fees. No origination fees, just a straight 8%. Another big distinction is extension fees. So on hard money, if you haven't cashed out in the length of the note, which is typically 6 months, 9 months, maybe 12 months, then the hard money lender, if you extend the note, they want more money. I know one hard money lender that charges 3% more of your amount borrowed just to extend 90 days. That's 1% a month, right? So with hard money, you're going to be up to like 20% in your first year. With private money, there are no extension fees, still just a straight 8%. Then another big distinction is how much money is the hard money lender and the private lender going to loan to you or advance when you buy the property. Hard money lender is only going to loan you 60 to 80% of your purchase price. Private money lender, big difference. You're going to get 100% of your purchase price. And if you're rehabbing, you're going to get 100% of the rehab. We always bring home a big check when we use private money. We never take any of our own money to the closing table. Here's the question. Who wants to get paid to buy properties without taking any of your own money to the closing table, right? I always bring them a $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 check. Now, I do want to make this distinction. Private money is not only just for the ugly house business. Private money is not just for rehabbing. Private money, here's a writer downer. Private money is for when the seller, I don't care if the seller is a for sale by owner, an institutional, REO, bank-owned property, short sale auction, it don't matter. You're going to use private money when the seller requires all the cash, period. Even if it's a for sale by owner. And so, and here's another writer downer. This is really important. Here's a check and balance. When you're using private money to pay all cash for, say, a single family house, if you can't bring home a big check when you buy and take none of your own money to the closing table, you're paying too much for the house. So just to clear this up, keep it simple. This only works if you're buying a property, no matter what condition it's in, at a discounted price. Because you see, we'll borrow up to 75% of the after repaired value. So back to that example where Aura is my private lender, you got a $200,000 after repaired value house that you're going to buy. I didn't say purchase price. I said after repaired value. Well, I'll buy that house all day long for $100,000 or less than 50% of the after repaired value. Well, you can borrow up to 75% of the after repaired value. So follow the money. Follow the money. If the after repaired value is $200,000, you can borrow up to $150,000. But if you're buying it for $100,000, follow the money. $150,000 comes into the trust account for the real estate for the attorney that's closing the deal. There's $150,000 there in the trust account. $100,000 of that $150,000 goes to the seller. Now you got a $50,000 excess cash to close when you buy. Well, of course, you're going to use 30 or 40,000 of that for the renovation, but that leaves you another 10 or 15,000 in equity that you can use any way you want to. Marketing, carrying cost, take a cruise to the Bahamas, whatever. It don't matter, right? So that's another big distinction. You always get to bring home a big check when you use true private money to fund your real estate deals.
Those are amazing insights and really differentiates, between the different ways to get money. So thank you for sharing that, Jay. One of the stories that kind of like caught on to me is how you raised over 2 million in 90 days. What was the key to that rapid success, in your opinion?
Well, there were two keys to getting $2 million in less than 90 days, right after being cut off from the bank. The first key was, again, no chasing, no begging, no selling, no persuading. I got my first $500,000 of that 2 million from one conversation. Let me share that in a short story. So Carol, Joy, and I are very involved in our local church, the Church of Christ, here in Morehead City, North Carolina, and we go to Bible study on Wednesday nights. So it was a Wednesday night, shortly after being cut off from the bank and me learning about private money. We go to Bible study at 7:30 on Wednesday night here on Barber Road in Morehead City. I walked into the foyer. I was looking for a gentleman by the name of Wayne. Now, Wayne and I had known each other for some time. I walked up to Wayne. I said, Wayne, I got something I'd like to talk to you about confidentially after Bible study. Have you got a few minutes? He said, sure, Brother Jay. So we have Bible study. We get together. We walk down to the nursery. I close the door. Here's exactly what I said to Wayne. Here's the script. Exactly what I said. I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. And he did. He was the Zenith television dealer in Morehead City, North Carolina. Now, if you don't know who the Zenith television dealer was, that means you're too young or to remember life before Walmart came to town. That's where you bought your TVs. He'd come out and install your TV. He'd repair your TV. He'd finance your TV. Wayne had put a TV in everybody's house in Morehead City. And so I said, Wayne, you know everybody in this town. And he did. He was very well connected with the Rotary Club and all that. I said, Wayne, and here's the magic phrase. Here's the magic phrase. I said, Wayne, I need your help. I said, you see, I have now opened up my real estate investing business by referral only. And I'm now paying insane high rates of return to my investors. When you run across somebody that's complaining about losing money in the stock market and hardly making nothing in the local bank and a certificate of deposit, would you refer them to me and I'll tell them about my program? And Wayne looked at me, he says, well, now, Brother Jay, what you got going on there? And I said, well, what are you saying, Wayne? I said, are you saying you might be interested? He said, well, I might be interested. I said, well, why is that? He said, well, I'm losing money in the stock market, as you just said, and I'm only making 3% in the local bank in a certificate of deposit. That's what it was back in 2009. He said, what kind of rate are you paying? I said, well, Wayne, that just sort of depends on the deal. I said, what sounds high to you? He said, well, I'm making 3% in a certificate of deposit. He said, I don't know, I guess maybe 5 or 6%. I said, Wayne, I can't pay you 5 or 6%, but I can pay you 8%. He said, put me down for $250,000. So that next day, I went to his and his wife's home here in Morehead City, and I put on my teacher hat, and I taught them about private money. They never heard of private money. I taught them my program. I taught them my interest rate I pay, how they're protected, maximum loan to value, how I name them on the insurance policy. Remember the secret sauce. I didn't talk any deals that I needed funding. I just talked about the program and the opportunity without any deal attached to that conversation. And you know what's interesting, Orr? After 2 cups of coffee that afternoon, I went to their house that next afternoon, And after 2 cups of coffee, that $250,000 became $500,000. And so I told them I'd put their money to work for them just as soon as possible. And then I did. I gave them a call with the good news phone call. That was the first $500,000. I got another $969,000 at one private lender luncheon. What in the world is that? I invited 20 people for lunch, and I paid for their lunch, and I had my CPA and my realtor and my real estate attorney there, my credibility team. And at the end of lunch, I took 20 minutes and I taught them. There you go again. Put on my teacher hat. And not one of these 20 people had ever heard of private money or self-directed IRAs. So I had my little PowerPoint presentation teaching the opportunity in the program, again, with no deals attached to it. And at the end of that luncheon, I got $969,000 pledged of people that were interested. So right there was $1.5 million of the $2 million that I got in the first 90 days.
Those are some amazing stories. Now that you get this money from, these private lenders, you said you invest in only Moorhead, or you invest all over North Carolina?
Eastern North Carolina.
Eastern Carolina.
So my rule is if I can't, in a reasonable amount of time, drive by the property, I don't want to do it. Now, I've got friends that invest all over the nation, and I say, have at it. If you want to invest all over the nation. You see, I'm not wholesaling.
Yeah.
I've never wholesaled a deal in my life. By the way, for those of you wholesalers that are listening, the beautiful thing about private money is now you can stay in any deal that you want to without just taking an assignment fee, right? Mm-hmm. By the way, if you are listening to this podcast and you are not signed up with motivatorsellers.com, you need to just don't pass go, don't go to jail, don't pay $200. You need to get signed up for motivatorsellers.com right now. Listen, I've been with this crowd for over 7 years, getting motivated seller leads all the time. And the beautiful thing about their program is you don't pay for any marketing until you've actually got a motivated lead that you're talking to. Motivatorsellers.com is my number one go-to source for motivated sellers. I digress. Anyway, again, if you're a wholesaler with private money, now you get to stay in any deal you want to. My average profits right now here in Eastern North Carolina are $86,000 on a single family house. I just made recently $160,000 on a condominium. And guess where the lead came from? MotivatedSellers.com, right? But I wouldn't have made $160,000 unless I'd had the MotivatedSellers.com lead and the private money. I closed that deal in 7 days. And if I hadn't had the private money lined up, I would have missed out on that deal.
That's amazing. So now let's say you find a good deal, it could come from us or from anywhere else, and you find a deal, an off-market deal in, let's say, Moorhead in North Carolina, and then you have someone that, is willing to give you that money. First of all, let's talk a little bit more about strategies. Do you buy and hold? Do you like flipping? What's your methods of investing?
Yeah, it depends on how I buy it. So if I buy it with private money and I'm going to renovate it into a beautiful, looks like a brand new home, I don't want to leave private money buried in that house. So if I'm paying with all cash, my rule of thumb is just to cash out. Mm-hmm. Flip in, flip out, right? However, if I buy the property on terms, say subject to the existing note or creative financing such as seller financing, if I buy it on terms from the seller, then typically I'm going to want to sell it on terms, rent to own, lease purchase. And you see, here's an advanced strategy. You can combine two strategies together in one deal. You buy the house on terms from the seller, and if they've got equity, I can use private money in second position, a smaller amount like $20,000, $30,000 for renovations or rehab or any kind of repairs that are needed. Or if they're facing foreclosure and they're behind on their payments, I can use private money to bring those payments current. So again, in answer to your question, or it depends on how I bought it. If I'm paying all cash for private money, I want to cash out. If I'm buying on terms, I want to sell it on lease purchase or rent to own.
That's a really good point. Now, you've been in this industry and for such a long time, and you are the private money guy. You've probably heard a lot of different stories, different myths. What are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions you hear about raising capital?
Oh my word. Woo. There's a lot of myths. One myth is a new real estate investor will say, nobody's going to loan me money. I've never done a deal. Who's going to loan me money? I've never done a deal. Well, here's the answer to that myth. And the answer is, if you don't pay them, the property does. Now, what in the world does that mean? You see, you're not borrowing money unsecured. You're going to collateralize the note with the deed of trust or the mortgage. Therefore, if you don't pay them, the lender gets the property, and they actually end up making more money than the interest that you would have paid them. So that's one myth. I can't get any money because I've never, done a deal. What's another myth? Private lenders are hard to find. Private lenders are hard to find. That is a myth, because let me tell you something from experience right now. There's more money out here to loan to you than there are deals. I mean, I got a problem. Right now, as of the date of this recording, I have over $1,250,000 available to me in private money, and it's just sitting there. I mean, I've got $8.5 million of private money that I use, and I just roll it from house to project to project to project. We'll have 12 or 15 projects going on simultaneously. But I'm telling you, there's more money available than there actually are deals out there. There's money all around you. And so another myth about private money that I've already talked about, but this is huge. Another big myth about private money is he who has the money makes the rules. Not so. Not so. Whoop, whoop. Not in this world, right? Mm-hmm. We make the rules. We set the interest rate. We are, as the borrower, we are our own underwriter, right? Mm-hmm. Another myth. Well, since the lender makes the rules, then there's no negotiation of the interest rate and the terms. Guess what? That statement is partly right. There is no negotiation. We make the rules, we set the interest rate, and that's it. There is no negotiation on the interest rate, because you're in the driver's seat. You are your own underwriter. And you know what I say? Just duplicate my system. Just duplicate my program, because it seems to work pretty well. And I'm actually going to give it to you here in just a little bit.
Well, I'm excited for you to share that. And I'm happy you cleared out these myths, because I see there's a lot of myths and fear when it comes to private money. But let's talk a little bit more about your program, kind of talk more about how this works in the field. So can you walk us through a typical private money deal from one of your students from start to finish?
Sure. So I'm thinking of one particular deal. So it came in on motivatedsellers.com, and the purchase price was $150,000. $150,000. And it was a major renovation. The after repaired value was $400,000. That's a pretty good spread, 150 to 400. And so it was a major renovation. The renovation was about $75,000. So all in, $225,000, after repaired value, $400,000. And so, of course, the good thing about the market we're in here in North Carolina, in fact, this house was just put on the market less than a month ago. And here's what the student did that I taught the student to do. When the house is ready to sell and put in the multiple listing service, list it with your realtor. I only pay 5%, not 6% of the sale price. And on Monday, put it in the multiple listing service, have your realtor put it in the multiple listing service under a category called coming soon. Coming soon. What that means is nobody can look at the house, but they can look at the price, they can look at pictures, they can look at the description, but then on Friday, have it go active. That means people can look at it. So what we want to do is line up a bunch of appointments, or your realtor lines up a bunch of appointments for people to see that house on Friday after going, active on Friday. For this particular property that I'm thinking of, my student had over 20 showings in 48 hours, multiple offers, and went under contract for $20,000 more than the asking price. Now, here's the takeaway from that illustration and that story. Unless my student had been signed up with motivatedsellers.com, they wouldn't have gotten the lead. The second takeaway is unless they'd had the private money lined up to offer to pay all cash, they would have missed out on the deal. So it's a pretty easy conclusion. Sign up with motivatedsellers.com and get private money lined up before you need it.
Wow, I love it. Straight to the point. Sometimes people take things and they make it so complicated, or they get scared. But if you, just like you've been giving us all these examples, you kind of took the way of doing things and you jumped into the water. You know what I mean? And then things along the way happened, and eventually, you reached the vision that you had before. So thank you for sharing that story. It's very inspirational, very motivational. And just like we spoke a little bit about fear, a lot of people that are now hearing this, maybe private money is new to them, or maybe they're just starting to invest. What fears did you have when you started raising money in the beginning? And how do you handle objections like, this sounds risky, or I've never done this before?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, or because new real estate investors that have never raised capital will say to me sometimes, Jay, I just don't know how to do this. And what they're saying is they say they got a fear of rejection, Let me answer that question or that concern with a question. How can you have a fear of rejection if you're not asking anybody for anything? I haven't asked anybody for money. All these examples I talked about, I haven't asked anybody for money. I told you about Wayne. I didn't ask him for money. I asked him for his help to spread the word, to let people know that I now have an opportunity. I didn't ask him for money. But what did he do? Now he's interested, right? And by the way, Wayne did spread the word, and we got a ton of referrals. So how do you overcome the fear of rejection? Lead with a servant's heart. You see, this is not about you. This is not about you getting the money. This is about you serving these other people and offering them an opportunity that they never heard of. And if you're not asking anybody for money and you're just teaching them what private money is and what self-directed IRAs are, you know what's interesting, Or? Over the years, we have gotten so many thank you notes in the mail as to how we have been a part of changing people's retirement years by offering them an opportunity that they had never heard about. One in particular I'm thinking about, they thanked us for changing their retirement years because that private lender, they got to go visit their grandchildren down in Florida anytime they wanted to because of the rate of return in private money that we were paying them that they would not have gotten otherwise. So it's all about win-win solutions. Again, you're not asking, begging, chasing, persuading. You're offering an opportunity. You're teaching people what this is all about without ever asking. It's all about serving.
I love that. I was going to say it's all about serving, and both sides are winning. So you always have to see how the other person is going to gain out of this. And it's very similar to marketing. I come from a marketing background. I've been doing marketing for years. It's like, if I market something and tell you, buy it, I show you that we're desperate to sell a product versus teach you about the product, make it more valuable for you. And then eventually you see like, wow, this is interesting. This is what I needed. And then you kind of come to me, you know what I mean? So that's a very interesting take. And I think that strategy is what's going to get investors to really get the money they need. Um,
Absolutely.
Now, following up on that, let's say you started, you've had a very amazing career and you're still doing really cool things. And I love today's conversation. I got a lot of value from it myself. But if you had to start scratch, and this is a question I love asking so many kinds of investors, because, I talk to people in the industry that do so many different kinds of things. We all have the same goal in mind. We want to help as many people as we can. We want to increase our profits. We want to get as many deals as we can. But if you had to completely start from scratch today, May 5th, no deals, no private money, no connections, just you, Jay Connor, but you wanted to succeed in real estate all over again. What steps would you take in the first 90 days?
Get a mentor that knows what they're doing. I was in this business for 6 years without having a mentor or a coach holding my hand. And it wasn't until I lost my line of credit at the bank that I searched for a mentor, and, to learn about private money. But, or I think about in the past, those first 6 years, I lost hundreds of thousands of dollars because I didn't know what I didn't know. I'm thinking of one particular property, a condominium I invested in. I was planning on flipping it. The market turned. I hadn't run the numbers on cash flow, so I had to rent it out. And for a long time, I lost money every month because I hadn't also run the numbers on renting it out. So those types of very, very expensive lessons will save you so much money if you get a mentor or a coach right up front instead of waiting until you have a problem. That's the biggest thing I would have done differently.
And to conclude this, what's one book, podcast, quote, or just a piece of advice that, comes from you, Jay, that's made a lasting impact on both your real estate career and your personal life?
Well, so many books. I mean, it's the books you read and the people you meet that will have the biggest impact on your destiny and your future. I'll share one book that changed my life, literally changed my life, changed the trajectory of where I was going. And that's when I was 24 years old. I was in a very, very dark place. And I woke up one morning saying, life has got to be better than this. Had no relationship with God. Family had sort of cut me off. I didn't have any friends to really speak of. And so I went to the bookstore and I went in the personal development section and I found a book that changed my life. The name of the book is University of Success, and it's by Og Mandino. It's still in print. It changed my life.
Wow. And what's next for you, Jay, for your career and for your personal life, just to get a little bit more, more about you?
What's next for me is to get my health in better health. I want to lose 50 pounds. I'm telling you, I want to get in better health, or for goodness sakes. But that's not the kind of answer you were looking for. So what's next for me? What's next for me is looking for more opportunities to make an impact and help other real estate investors transform their lives and transform their businesses. Private money transformed mine and had the biggest impact on my business. And so I'm at a stage of life right now to where I just love giving back. I love being passionate and sharing my passion about how private money can transform other people's real estate investing businesses. And that's what's next for me, is looking for as many ways that I can share inspiration, transformation, and true knowledge on how to be in control of your real estate investing business by using private money.
For sure. And thank you today, for inspiring me. And in general, Jay, I love the energy, the perspective you have on life. It's very, very important in and out of our careers. And in general, thank you for sharing your insights today and experiences and all those amazing stories with us today. It's been a pleasure having you on Investor One-on-One. If our investors that are watching this want to connect with you or learn more, how can they find you?
Thank you. Or as a thank you for all of you that have been listening and tuning in here to Investor One-on-One, I'd love to give you a gift. And the gift is a copy of my most recent book, Where to Get the Money Now. Where to Get the Money Now, subtitle, where to get all the money for your real estate investing deals without relying on institutional money or hard money lenders. I will send this to you express mail, and it's $20 on Amazon, but don't go to Amazon. Let me give you the book for free. Just cover shipping, and you can pick up the book at jayconner.com/book. That's jayconner.com/book. I'll rush it right out. I'm also going to include 2 tickets to the Private Money Conference, which is coming up right around the corner. This is a $3,000 event, but because you're listening to Investor One-on-One, I'm going to include those 2 tickets valued at $3,000, and you get to come for only a $97 registration fee. That's just to hold your seat. So I'll send you the book. I'll send you tickets to the live event, and also my podcast. Obviously, you love podcasts. You wouldn't be tuning in. I'm now in my 8th year of podcasting, and the name of my show is Raising Private Money. Imagine that. Raising Private Money with Jay Conner. It's on all the podcast platforms. And every week, twice a week, I got 2 shows a week. I interview other real estate investors that have raised private money and how they go about doing it. Come join the party.
Wow. So that'll be linked below. And to everyone watching, thanks again for tuning in.
Are you feeling inspired by the knowledge you gained in this episode? Then head over to jayconner.com/moneyguide. That's jayconner.com/moneyguide and download your free guide that shares 7 reasons why private money will skyrocket your real estate investing business right now. Again, that's jayconner.com/moneyguide to get your free guide. We'll see you next time on Raising Private Money